They're back. MPs are back in Ottawa for the final stretch of this sitting before the summer barbecue circuit begins. And things got off to a quick start with a letter from the Tories asking Speaker Greg Fergus to resign. Fergus's riding sent out an invite to an event with him that slammed the Conservatives, saying their policies, quote, would risk our health, safety and pocketbooks. That portion of the post was taken down eventually, and the party itself took the blame, apologizing to Fergus later in the day for what they said was a result of a miscommunication between the party and the riding association. But this is not the first time Fergus has been accused of being partisan in a role that's supposed to be anything but. The front bench is here to talk about that. Former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant is with us. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Tom, I feel like we have deja vu. Just a few short weeks ago, you were already saying that Greg Fergus should resign. Does this change the context at all for you, or do you still think that's the case?
Yeah, 3 strikes, you're out. It's going to depend on what the NDP does, of course, because the Conservatives have asked that he be gone. The Bloc is, interestingly enough, backing up the Conservatives on this one, just saying it's too much, too partisan. He can't stay in that seat. And it'll depend on the NDP. I remember when the very first event happened. So you and I have just been talking, a couple of weeks ago, we were on about what? Well, we were on about the second round where he had turfed the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition on the flimsiest of excuses. I found that highly partisan, especially given the fact that Trudeau had just used a slight against Poilievre and nothing had happened to him. This is the third time. The very first one was when he made a video wearing his official robes and in his own offices. It was a highly partisan video, and the only excuse he gave was it wasn't supposed to come out. No, you weren't supposed to do it. But at the time, everybody, including me, was saying, give him a break. It's a rookie mistake. Yes, it's serious, but he should be given a chance. And I remember at the time the NDP saying this. They said, well, it is a rookie mistake. We'll turn the page on this one, but if it happens again, then there'll be a real problem. The NDP, of course, looked past the exchange between Trudeau and Poilievre. I thought it was a real problem. But this time around, I can't see, honestly, how Jagmeet Singh can continue to support, on a question of confidence, Greg Fergus as Speaker. He's got such an incredibly important role in our democracy. And he does have a deal with Justin Trudeau to support the government on issues of confidence. But this isn't a question of confidence in the government. It's a question of confidence in the Speaker of the House that belongs to everybody. And I think that on that, it's going to be very surprising if the NDP continues to say, well, maybe it's not so bad.
Well, they kind of did today, Lisa, quite extensively, not just their House leader, but also the leader of the party, Jagmeet Singh, basically in response to all the questions said, look, it wasn't his fault. The Liberal Party should apologize. A few hours later, the Liberal Party did apologize to Greg Fergus. And Mr. Singh kept saying, well, we have more, other things we want to focus on, and then named off a list of things like grocery prices, for example, that he did want to focus on. So to Tom's point, it doesn't appear to me like the NDP is going to move in the direction of the Conservatives and the Bloc.
No, and probably because the NDP feels that they're getting a fair shake by the Speaker in the House of Commons. It's the Conservatives and the Bloc that are getting the treatment from the Speaker that is clearly partisan, and he continues to show his stripes of partisanship. And it's just beyond the pale that this would actually be able to happen. First of all, he said the very first time he went offside, and I agree with Tom, when he did that video for a retiring Liberal leader, and he waxed on eloquently about how great it was to be a Liberal. We all said, okay, rookie mistake, it's going to be okay. He came before a committee and he promised to do better. This is not doing better. This is not putting things in place to ensure that these kinds of besmirches upon the office of the Speaker don't happen. Does he think this is the United States where it's okay to have a partisan Speaker? Is that what this is all about? Because quite frankly, they are doing a number, I have to say, on the nonpartisanship, the stature of the office, and the fact that the NDP don't seem to give a whit about it either, I think is absolutely horrible.
Brian, the defense that the Speaker himself hasn't put forward, but the Liberal Party did, was basically like, this is a pro forma thing that we put on these kinds of invitations. The Conservatives dispute that characterization, but it was just sort of automatically applied. And, the word that they used was miscommunication. In your view, does that defense land? And does the Speaker, deserve the benefit of the doubt based on that?
let's parse it out here. I think that that's the truth. I really do. As I was reading the article as to why we would be talking about Speaker Fergus again, I certainly, reading the article, came to the conclusion, even before that argument was made, this was clearly something he most likely did not even look at, wasn't aware it was being sent out that day and what the language was being used. Somebody riding association, somebody in an office somewhere, I don't know, thought, hey, this is the boilerplate that the Liberal Party uses. This is a riding event, so we're going to just use this boilerplate sort of messaging. So I think that's what happened. Now, I feel a few things tonight at the same time. I'm sort of getting tired of defending Speaker Fergus, because I do think the best thing you can do as Speaker is never. It's almost like the media. It's like never become the story. That your sort of goal is to just arbitrate things and really be in the background. And 2024, there's certainly a lot of Speaker stories, right? So I think that's already sort of a bit of an irritation. That said, I will say in isolation and all the events, the second one, I certainly think he tried to navigate a difficult situation with the leaders of the Conservatives and Liberals jarring with each other. So I really don't think that merits to be one of the strikes. The first one merits to be a strike. I think he was trying to say, I didn't know it'd be at a Liberal event, so that made it all that much worse, but it was an error. And this one, I mean, he didn't do it. Now, I will say, getting a little tired for sure. And also somebody made the mistake in some office somewheres. And ultimately, the buck does stop with the person that holds that office.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think to Brian's point, Rob, like, how many times do we have this conversation before you have to evaluate the fact that you are having it for the third or the fourth, whatever the time ends up being? And does the Speaker maybe need to address it head on himself? Because he has not done that at all in these instances, except the first one where he provided a statement.
Yeah, he apologized for the video that he made for John Fraser, who, should also be remembered, John Fraser, the former interim Ontario Liberal leader, retired in December when Bonnie Crombie became the full-time leader, and Fergus and Fraser go way back. I mean, Fergus used to babysit for Fraser's kids. It wasn't as much. It was more of a personal thing. It was poor judgment on his part, but I think he did it out of friendship. I agree with Tom. I think his most egregious mistake was kicking out the leader of the opposition over on a pretty flimsy kind of grounds. But having said that, yes, Fergus is gaffe prone. But I'm starting to wonder if there isn't a weird kind of obsession that the Conservatives have with Fergus. It's really a Planet Ottawa kind of thing, that you're fixated on this guy. He's the referee. Is he a good referee? Clearly, they don't think that he is. And Brian is right. When the referee becomes a story, that's probably not a good thing for the game. That being said, if I were a Conservative strategist, I think they've already won on this issue. I don't know. Do they want to be the ones who drive out the first black speaker in the history of Canada? That's something they've scored a political victory already on him because he's not done a great job and made some questionable judgment calls. But man, oh man, at a certain point, really, they start to look like they're obsessed.
Tom, what do you think about that? I sort of sense that there is actually an acknowledgement with the Tories that this is like something that can get under the government's skin, but not something that they're going to win massive amounts of votes over. And I say that because they're not holding press conferences about it. They're not leading on it in question period. They're sending out the letter they sent out this morning and sort of letting the conversation go where it may. But it seems to me like there is some tacit acknowledgement of a bit of what Rob's referencing.
I agree with you completely, and I'm not surprised that it's something that's going to come up. But at the same time, it is not the deciding factor here. The only question that has to be decided here is this healthy for the institution? These are fraught times. It's a difficult time. We're towards the end of a longish mandate with a government that is not very popular in the polls. And to have the overarching impression that the person who's in the chair making those decisions is somebody who's on one of the teams and not somebody who's a little bit above the fray and capable of rendering those decisions, I think that's the only thing we should be looking at. But I agree with your analysis, Vashi, that if the Conservatives had wanted to push this harder, we would have had this type of motion after the set-to between Trudeau and Poilievre over the name-calling. And what happened there is it went quiet. So now that it's coming back with this new thing, I mean, Brian, Gallant makes an interesting argument that it's the type of dumb mistake that can be made by people at the riding level. But is it, again, just going to be, swept aside? I do think that there is a background question there, exactly the one that Rob just mentioned, that makes it even more delicate, and there will be people who will raise that as an issue, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the Conservatives are so gingerly dancing around this thing, because they don't want that to become an issue.
Okay, I'm going to take a short break. Everyone on your screen is sticking around.